Have you ever wondered how scientists actually manage to solve the massive communication problem of organizing our incredibly chaotic natural world? I mean, just look around. You see a huge variety of living things, from potted plants and birds to insects and your own pets. But how do we even begin to make sense of all of that without descending into absolute confusion? How do we build a universal language of life? Let's dive into this explainer and find out.
We are going to journey from the initial confusion of naming a single plant all the way up to understanding the entire evolutionary web of life. Here's our agenda. 1. The biodiversity naming problem. 2. The binomial solution. 3. Rules of the name. 4. Organizing chaos into taxa. And finally, the big picture, systematics. Let's get right into it.
So, to really understand why these strict biological rules exist in the first place, we first need to grasp the staggering scale of the natural world around us. Section 1. The biodiversity naming problem.
Get this, 1.7 to 1.8 million. That is the staggering number of known and described species currently recognized on Earth. And remember, that's only what we know about so far. If you're to walk into a dense forest, the number and kinds of living organisms you'd see would just skyrocket. Plus, there are millions of organisms we can't even see with the naked eye. Each different kind of plant, animal, or microscopic organism out there represents a completely distinct, unique species.
Now, you can imagine the absolute chaos this massive diversity creates. Relying on local names is a complete nightmare because they vary wildly from place to place, sometimes even within a single country. Just imagine the headache if botanists and zoologists didn't have established ways to refer to the exact same organism. It highlights a desperate need for standardization. We literally need one universally accepted name worldwide.
And that absolute necessity gave birth to nomenclature. Simply put, it's the rigorous standardization process of naming living organisms so that a particular organism is known by the exact same name everywhere in the world. But, obviously, naming is only possible when the organism is described correctly, and we know exactly what organism the name is attached to. This foundational step is called identification. You have to firmly identify it before you can officially name it.
So how does this actually translate into a functional system for biologists across the globe? Let's move to Section 2, the binomial solution. To facilitate this massive task of global study, scientists set up specific procedures to assign scientific names. For plants, they use the International Code for Botanical Nomenclature, and for animals, the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature. The core format they rely on is called binomial nomenclature. Popularized by scientist Carolus Linnaeus, this is a highly convenient, universally accepted naming system that uses a two-word format. Basically, every single described organism gets a name consisting of two components, a generic name and a specific epithet.
Let's look at something we're all super familiar with, the mango. Its scientific name is Mangifera indica. In this binomial system, Mangifera represents the broad genus that the plant belongs to, while indica is the very particular species, also known as the specific epithet. By using just those two words, scientists can pinpoint one exact organism out of millions. Honestly, it's an incredibly elegant solution to a very complex problem.
Now, you might be wondering, how do we actually format these two simple words? That brings us to Section 3, Rules of the Name.
To guarantee absolute consistency literally everywhere in the world, scientific names follow some very strict procedural steps. They're always Latin in origin and italicized. The first word is the genus, and that always starts with a capital letter, followed by the specific epithet in lowercase. And if you ever handwrite them, well, they absolutely must be separately underlined.
Oh, and there's also a built-in credit system for discoveries, which is pretty cool. Sometimes you'll see an abbreviation at the very end of the biological name, right after the specific epithet. For example, Mangifera indica, Linn. That abbreviation, Linn, indicates that Carolus Linnaeus was the first person to scientifically describe this species. It's a permanent credit to the author built right into the scientific record.
Naming is just the beginning, though, because studying millions of organisms individually is just impossible. We have to group them. Section 4, Organizing Chaos into Taxa.
When we look out at the world, we naturally group things into observable categories. If I say dogs, cats, insects, or wheat, a very specific picture pops into your mind. The formal scientific term for these convenient, observable categories is taxa, or taxon if we're just talking about one.
But crucially, these taxa aren't just isolated buckets. They operate at different, overlapping levels to create a hierarchy.
Think about it. A dog is a mammal, and a mammal is an animal. Because of that, dogs, mammals, and animals are all distinct taxa operating at different levels. It's essentially a massive, structured biological filing system for the entire natural world.
And this brings us to taxonomy. Scientists use a massive toolkit of characteristics, like external and internal structure, cell structure, developmental processes, and ecological information, to classify all living organisms into different taxa. This whole process of characterization, identification, classification, and nomenclature forms the bedrock of modern taxonomy.
While early humans only classified organisms based on their practical uses for food or shelter, modern biological science zooms out much, much further. Let's look at Section 5, the big picture, systematics.
This leads us to a much deeper question. How are all these classified groups actually related to one another? We've successfully categorized them into neat folders, sure, but what is the evolutionary thread tying them all together?
The answer to that is systematics. You see, human beings weren't just interested in knowing more about different kinds of organisms. We wanted to uncover the deep relationships among them. So the crucial point here is that systematics takes the solid foundation of basic taxonomy and enlarges it to map out the grand evolutionary relationships between species over time.
The word systematics itself actually comes from the Latin word systema, meaning the systematic arrangement of organisms. Linnaeus himself recognized how absolutely crucial this was, using Systema Naturae as the title of his groundbreaking publication. The scope of this field is vast, recognizing that life on Earth isn't just a list of random items, but one giant, magnificent, interconnected evolutionary web. And here is the best part: this isn't just ancient history. It is a wildly active, ongoing mission. With millions of species left unnamed and undiscovered in the wild right now, what missing puzzle piece will you discover next? The natural world is out there waiting for you, and now you know exactly how to logically organize whatever fascinating organism you might find.